Commander stood in the center of the great chamber and he felt small. The room was enormous, built for creatures much larger than him. Above, below, and all around him sat the members of the Galactic Board. There were 47 different species, and all of them were staring at him. Some looked like giant crystals that glowed with inner light. Others were clouds of energy that floated in special containers. There were beings with too many legs, beings with no legs at all, and beings that couldn't even describe. But they all had one thing in common. They were all looking at him with the same expression. Jacques' uniform was clean now, but it couldn't hide what he had been through. 3 months ago, he had been a proud commander of the Empire. He had led 50,000 soldiers. He had commanded 12 warships. He had been certain of victory. Now he stood here alone, trying to explain how it all went wrong. "Commander," said Council Chair. The ancient being's voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "Please continue your testimony." Took a deep breath. His hands shook slightly, but he forced them to be still. "We thought it would be simple," he said. "Earth had no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. Our intelligence reports said they were primitive." "Primitive," repeated. The words seemed to hang in the air. "And yet you stand here with only 1,200 survivors from your force of 50,000. Explain this to the board." Closed his eyes for a moment. He could still see it all. The fires, the screams, the realization that they had made a terrible mistake. "We were wrong," he said simply. "We were so very wrong." A board member who looked like a floating jellyfish spoke up. Her voice was soft but clear. "Commander, are you telling this board that you invaded a planet that had not yet achieved space travel, a planet that had no knowledge of the greater galaxy?" "Yes," said. The chamber erupted. Dozens of species began talking at once in languages couldn't understand. The translator in his ear struggled to keep up. Words like violation and illegal and atrocity came through clearly enough. Raised one massive limb and silence fell immediately. "The invasion of precontact species is forbidden by galactic law," said. "This alone is cause for severe punishment, but that is not why we are all so disturbed." Gestured to a large screen that appeared in the center of the chamber. Images began to play. Wanted to look away, but he forced himself to watch. It was footage from his own soldiers' cameras. The first image showed his ships entering Earth's atmosphere. The planet looked beautiful from space. Blue and green and white, peaceful. The next images were not peaceful at all. "What we want to know," continued, "is how a pre-species defeated the military might of the Empire in just 4 days of ground combat." The screen showed soldiers running through a city street. Buildings exploded around them. Remembered this moment. It was in a place called Seoul, one of Earth's major cities. "We landed in multiple cities simultaneously," explained. "We thought overwhelming force would make them surrender quickly. Instead, they—" He stopped. How could he explain it? "They fought back," he finished weakly. "Fought back," said another board member, a being made of living metal. "Commander, the reports say you lost 70% of your ground forces in 4 days. That is not fighting back. That is annihilation. What happened down there?" His jaw tightened. "They knew we were coming. Somehow, even without our technology, they tracked our ships for weeks before we arrived. When we landed, they were ready." The screen showed more footage. Human soldiers moving through rubble with weapons that looked crude compared to technology. But those crude weapons were devastatingly effective. "Their weapons are simple," said. "Bullets, explosives, kinetic energy. We thought our shields would protect us." He laughed bitterly. "Our shields were designed to stop energy weapons. These bullets just passed through, and they were so fast, so accurate." "But surely your superior technology," began the jellyfish-like being. "Technology means nothing when you're dead," interrupted. He didn't care if he was being rude. These beings needed to understand. Every human knows how to fight, not just their soldiers. Everyone, old people, Young people. They all knew where to hide, how to resist, how to kill us. The screen showed a human city. It should have been captured in hours. Instead, it became a maze of death. Humans attacked from windows, from underground tunnels, from behind every corner. They used bombs hidden in roads. They poisoned water supplies. They pretended to surrender and then attacked when the soldiers came close. They don't fight like we do, continued. When we fight, we follow rules. We have honor. We have codes of warfare. These humans, they fight to win. Nothing is off limits. Nothing is too dirty or too cruel if it means victory. You're describing savages, said the metal being. No, said a new voice. Everyone turned. In the observers section, a human stood up. She was small compared to most species in the room, but she walked forward with confidence. Her name was, and she was Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. Permission to speak, Council Chair, asked politely. Studied her for a long moment. Permission granted, Ambassador. Walked until she stood near. She didn't look at him. Instead, she looked at the board members. Commander calls us savages who don't follow rules, said. Her voice was calm and clear. But he invaded our world without warning. He tried to conquer our people without asking if we wanted to be conquered. Who is the savage here? Several board members shifted uncomfortably. The commander is correct about one thing, continued. We fight to win. Do you know why? Because we have spent 10,000 years fighting each other. Every war crime you can imagine we have done to our own people. Every terrible weapon, every dirty trick, every brutal tactic, we learned it all fighting other humans. She turned to look at Now. You came to Earth thinking we were weak because we hadn't reached the stars yet. But you didn't ask why we hadn't reached the stars. We were too busy perfecting the art of killing each other. The chamber was silent. When you invaded, said, you gave us something we never had before, a common enemy. For the first time in our history, all of humanity united, and you discovered what we're capable of when we stop fighting each other and start fighting together. Leaned forward. Ambassador, what is Earth's position now? Your planet has proven itself extremely dangerous. Should we not be concerned? Smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We want peace, Council Chair. We want to join the galaxy as partners, but we also want the galaxy to understand one simple truth. And what is that? Asked. Never invade Earth again, said softly, because next time we won't be surprised, and next time there won't be any survivors at all. The weight of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Looked at this small human woman and felt the same fear he had felt on Earth. The galaxy had discovered humanity, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months earlier, Commander had felt very different. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the blue planet on the main screen. Earth. It looked so peaceful spinning in the darkness of space. All ships report ready, Commander, said his second officer. Nodded with satisfaction. 12 warships, 50,000 soldiers, the best weapons in the Empire. This would be his greatest victory. Begin final briefing, he ordered. His officers gathered around the holographic display. Captain, his best ground commander, studied the map of Earth's major cities with interest. Intelligence reports are clear, said. This species has no knowledge of the greater galaxy. No shields, no energy weapons. They still use chemical propulsion for their primitive spacecraft. This should take no more than 1 week. What about resistance? Asked. He was always careful, always thinking ahead. Minimal, replied. These humans fight with small explosive projectiles. Our armor will protect us easily. The plan is simple. We land in their capital cities. We broadcast surrender terms. They submit or we demonstrate our power. Frowned slightly. Commander, their cities are large, millions of individuals in each one, if they resist. They won't, interrupted. Look at their technology. They're barely beyond their own planet. Once they see our power, they'll surrender immediately. It always works this way with primitive species. but still looked uncertain. "Permission to speak freely, Commander." "Granted." "I've reviewed all the data on this species," said slowly. "They have an unusual history. In the last 100 years alone, they've had 2 massive global wars. They've developed weapons capable of destroying their entire planet. They've killed millions of their own kind. These are not peaceful beings." Waved a hand dismissively. "All species fight among themselves before they reach the stars. Once they see a real threat, they'll understand their place in the galaxy." He tapped the hologram and it showed his invasion plan. "First wave lands here, here, and here. Seoul, New York, Mumbai, 3 of their largest population centers. Second wave provides air support. Third wave secures resources and infrastructure. Simple and effective." The officers nodded, but still looked troubled. "You worry too much, old friend," said with a smile. "This time next week, Earth will be part of the Empire. Now get your troops ready. We land at dawn." The landing crafts descended through Earth's atmosphere 6 hours later. Sat with his soldiers, checking his weapons one final time. His unit of 500 would take the city called Seoul. It was a simple mission. Land in the central district. Secure the government buildings. Wait for surrender. 2 minutes to landing, the pilot announced. Looked at his soldiers. They were young, most of them. They'd trained for years but never seen real combat. He hoped this would be as easy as the commander promised. The craft touched down in a large open space. The door opened and led his soldiers out into the morning light. The city was silent. Tall buildings rose all around them. Streets stretched out empty. His instincts screamed at him that something was wrong. "Spread out," he ordered. "Standard search pattern, be alert." His soldiers moved forward in formation. They advanced down a wide street toward a cluster of important-looking buildings. That's when the city came alive. Windows shattered. The loud crack of gunfire erupted from every direction. Saw 3 of his soldiers fall in the first second. Their shields flickered and died as bullets punched through them like they weren't even there. "Take cover," shouted, diving behind a vehicle. More gunfire, explosions. Risked a glance and saw humans firing from windows, from rooftops, from behind vehicles. They weren't panicking. They weren't running away. They were fighting with cold efficiency. "Return fire," he ordered. His soldiers tried. Their energy weapons were powerful, but they were slow. By the time a soldier aimed and fired, the human shooter had moved. The buildings provided too much cover. A soldier near screamed. He'd been shot in the leg, right in the gap between his armor plates. How did they know where the weak points were? The battle lasted 3 hours. 3 hours of constant fighting. When finally managed to pull his unit back to the landing craft, he had lost 60 soldiers. 60 dead in 3 hours. This wasn't supposed to happen. "All units report," Commander's voice came over the radio. The reports came in one by one. New York, heavy casualties, retreat advised. Mumbai, trapped in Central District, requesting immediate air support. Beijing, communications lost. Lagos, landing craft destroyed, survivors pinned down. Couldn't believe what he was hearing. This was supposed to be simple. "Air support, engage all human defensive positions," he ordered. The fighters screamed down from orbit. They fired on human military bases, on government buildings, on anything that looked like a target. But the humans had answers for that too. Missiles rose from hidden locations all over the planet. Simple, crude missiles with chemical propulsion. But there were thousands of them. The fighters dodged and weaved, but there were too many. One by one, they started falling from the sky. On the ground, things were worse. The humans didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like they had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. Sergeant Myra led her unit through the ruins of what used to be a shopping district in Seoul. She was special forces, trained for exactly this kind of fight. When the alien ships appeared in the sky weeks ago, she knew this day would come. Team 1, take the left flank, she said quietly into her radio. Team 2, prepare the surprise for our guests. The aliens were predictable. They moved in formation, scanning with their advanced sensors. But Myra knew something they didn't. Sometimes the old ways work best. Her team had planted explosives throughout the district. Simple bombs made from fertilizer and fuel. Nothing fancy. Nothing their sensors would recognize as a threat. The aliens marched right over them. Myra pressed the detonator. The explosion threw aliens through the air like toys. The ones who survived stumbled around, confused and hurt. Myra's team opened fire from 3 directions at once. It was over in seconds. Move to the next position, Myra ordered. They'll send more. This pattern repeated across the planet. Humans used every trick they had learned from centuries of fighting each other. They hid bombs in roads. They poisoned water supplies the aliens tried to use. They pretended to be civilians and then attacked when the soldiers got close. But the worst part for and the other soldiers wasn't the tactics. It was the humans themselves. They didn't stop. Even when wounded, even when outnumbered, they kept fighting. Watched a human soldier with one arm continue shooting until he ran out of bullets. Then he charged with a knife. They should have been terrified. Instead, they were angry. On the second day, his craft was shot down by human fighter jets. The primitive aircraft shouldn't have been able to touch them, but the human pilots flew with reckless abandon. One actually crashed his plane into a transport, destroying both. Survived the crash and found himself on foot, deep in enemy territory. He expected to be killed immediately. Instead, he was captured by a group of human soldiers. They could have executed him. He could see it in their eyes they wanted to. But they didn't. They tied his hands and gave him water and treated his wounds. Why, asked, why help me? I came to conquer your world. One soldier, a young man with tired eyes, looked at him. Because we're not you, he said in broken. We know how to show mercy, but don't think that makes us weak. By the 4th day, Commander had seen enough. He'd lost 35,000 soldiers. Most of his landing craft were destroyed. Human forces were now actively hunting his remaining troops. All units retreat to orbit, he ordered. Immediate evacuation. This mission is over. But as his ships tried to leave Earth's atmosphere, they discovered something terrible. The humans had been preparing for this moment, not for weeks, for decades. Satellites that they had thought were for communication suddenly activated. They were weapons platforms, crude but effective. Missiles launched from the ground, from the sea, even from submarines hidden in the ocean. The humans were using nuclear weapons against his fleet. Primitive, simple nuclear weapons that his shields should have stopped easily. But there were so many of them, and they exploded with such force that the shields couldn't handle it all. Watch from his holding cell as human guards cheered. On a television screen, he saw ships burning in orbit. He saw escape pods falling like rain. And he understood finally what Commander had refused to see. Humans weren't primitive. They were survivors, and they had spent thousands of years learning how to kill the most dangerous predator in their galaxy. Each other. Commander watched his fleet burn and felt his confidence die with it. From the bridge of his flagship, he could see 3 of his 12 ships already dead in space. Debris floated everywhere. Escape pods drifted like seeds on the wind. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. Get us away from the planet. The ship shuddered as another missile detonated nearby. These weren't supposed to reach them. Earth technology was primitive. Chemical rockets couldn't threaten warships in orbit. But nobody had told the humans that. Commander, we're tracking over 5,000 missiles inbound, his sensor officer reported. They're launching from everywhere. Land bases, ships, submarines we didn't even know existed. How is this possible? Demanded. Our intelligence said they had no space warfare capability. They don't, sir, the officer replied. These are just ballistic missiles with nuclear warheads. They're throwing everything they have at us. Felt ice in his stomach. Ballistic missiles, nuclear weapons, technology over 100 years old by galactic standards, and it was working. All ships maximum acceleration, he ordered. Get us beyond their missile range. But the humans had another surprise waiting. Lieutenant Sora sat in the cockpit of her fighter jet, streaking upward through the thinning atmosphere. The altimeter showed impossible numbers. Her aircraft was never designed to go this high. "Sora, you're reaching the edge of safe altitude." Her commander's voice crackled in her ear. "I know," she replied calmly. She could see the alien ship ahead trying to escape. "I've got a lock." "Sora, at that altitude." "I know," she said again. There wasn't enough air to fly anymore. Once she fired her missiles, she wouldn't be able to turn back. Her plane would fall and she would fall with it. But that was okay. Her daughter was safe in a shelter. Her parents were safe. Her country was safe because she and thousands of others like her were willing to do what needed to be done. "Target locked," she said, firing. The missiles dropped from under her wings and ignited. They shot upward toward the alien ship, accelerating faster than her plane could ever go. Sora watched them streak away. She had time to smile before her plane began to tumble, time to think that maybe, just maybe, they would win this. The missiles struck the carrier in 3 places. The ship's shields flickered and failed. Atmosphere vented into space. The carrier began to spin out of control. Sora didn't see it. She was already gone. But she wasn't the only one. Across Earth, pilots made the same choice. They flew their planes as high as they could go and fired their weapons at ships trying to escape. Some even flew their planes directly into the alien vessels, turning themselves into guided missiles. It was insane, it was wasteful, it was completely effective. "Commander, we've lost the carrier strength of Empire," an officer reported too. "The destroyer Swift Victory is reporting critical damage. The transport haven of peace just exploded." His hands gripped the arms of his command chair so hard they hurt. This couldn't be happening. They were the Empire. They had conquered a dozen worlds. They had never lost a battle in space. Until now. "What about our ground forces?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "We've evacuated 12,000, the officer said quietly. "The rest are either dead or captured." 12,000 from 50,000 felt sick. "Get us out of here," he ordered. "Full speed. We're leaving this cursed planet behind." But Earth wasn't done with them yet. Deep underground, in a facility that had been built during something humans called the Cold War, engineer typed commands into an ancient computer system. Around him, military personnel watched screens showing the retreating alien ships. "Sir, the satellites are in position," reported. Colonel, commander of Earth's United Defense Forces, nodded grimly. "Activate them." His fingers flew across the keyboard. Above Earth, thousands of satellites received his signal. For decades, Earth had launched satellites into orbit. Communications satellites, weather satellites, GPS satellites. At least, that's what they told anyone who asked. But 10% of those satellites had a secret purpose. They had been launched over 30 years, prepared for a day that most people thought would never come. First contact, and not the friendly kind. Now those satellites came alive. Solar panels unfolded, weapon systems activated, targeting computers locked onto the retreating fleet. They weren't powerful weapons. Each satellite carried a simple kinetic weapon, a rod of dense metal accelerated by a magnetic rail. No explosives, no fancy technology, just mass and velocity. But there were thousands of them, and they were already in orbit, and the ships were running away in predictable patterns. The satellites fired. From his perspective, his fleet suddenly started dying for no reason. Ships reported hull breaches, engines failed, life support systems went offline. "What's hitting us?" he demanded. Small projectiles, sir, the sensor officer said, confusion in his voice. Extremely fast, coming from satellites, the communication satellites. Wanted to laugh, he wanted to cry. They weren't communication satellites, they were weapons. The humans had been planning for this for decades. How long had they known? How long had they been preparing for alien invasion? Sir, we're losing our escort, another officer reported. 3 more destroyers are damaged. Keep running, ordered. There was nothing else to do. Maximum speed, don't stop. Captain watched all of this from his cell on Earth. The guards had left the television on, and human news stations were broadcasting everything. They showed the alien ships fleeing. They showed celebrations in the streets. But also saw the cost. The news showed destroyed cities. They showed hospitals overflowing with wounded. They showed memorials being built for the millions who had died. The humans had won, but it wasn't a happy victory. One guard remained near cell, the same young soldier who had given him water after his capture. They had talked several times over the past days. His name was Private Minu. "Why did you do this?" asked quietly. "You had no chance. Your technology is so far behind ours. Why didn't you surrender?" Minu looked at him with those tired eyes. "Would you surrender your home if someone came to take it?" "No," admitted. "But we would have made you part of the empire, given you protection, technology, resources." "We didn't ask for any of that," Minu said. "You came to conquer, not to ask. And humans don't do well with conquerors. We've had empires rise and fall on this planet for thousands of years. Every time someone thinks they can force us to submit, we show them why that's a mistake." "But so many died," said. "Your cities are destroyed, your people are suffering. Was it worth it?" Minu was quiet for a long moment. "My grandfather used to tell me stories," he finally said. "About a war his grandfather fought in, about occupation and resistance. He said that freedom isn't free. Sometimes you have to pay a terrible price for it. But slavery is even more expensive. It costs you your soul." He looked at directly. "We paid the price. We kept our souls. Yes, it was worth it." In orbit, fleet finally reached a safe distance. He looked at the displays showing his losses and felt like he had aged 100 years. 12 ships had entered Earth's orbit. 5 were limping away, damaged and barely functional. 7 were destroyed or left behind. "Set course for home," he said quietly. "We need to report what happened here." "What do we tell them, Commander?" asked his second officer. Thought about that. How could he explain this disaster? How could he make the Empire understand? "We tell them the truth," he finally said. "We tell them we found a species that has spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare, a species that would rather die than surrender, a species that turns everything into a weapon, even their communication satellites." He paused, looking at Earth shrinking on the main screen. "And we tell them to never, ever go back." On Earth, Colonel stood in the ruins of the command center. The battle was over. The aliens were gone, but the work was just beginning. "Sir, we're receiving messages from other alien species," an aide reported. "They want to know what happened here. Some are offering help, others are concerned." Almost smiled. "Concerned. Yes, they should be concerned." "Tell them we'll respond when we're ready," he said. "Right now, we have to take care of our own people." "And if more aliens come?" the aide asked. Looked at the screens showing the destroyed alien ships floating in orbit. He thought of Lieutenant Sara and the thousands like her who had given everything to protect their home. "Then we'll be ready," he said simply. "We're always ready." In his cell, heard the celebrations outside growing louder. The humans were cheering their victory. He didn't blame them. But he also felt something else. Respect. These humans were terrifying, yes, but they were also incredible. He wondered what would happen now. Would Earth join the galaxy? Would they stay isolated? Would anyone else be foolish enough to attack them? He hoped not. He had seen enough death for one lifetime. Outside, the sun was setting on the first day of Earth's new history, a history where humanity was no longer alone in the universe. And the universe was learning to be very careful around them. 1 month after the invasion, Earth was a planet of contradictions. There were victory parades and funeral processions. There were celebrations and mourning. There were people looking forward to the future and people who couldn't forget the past. Walked through the streets of Seoul, seeing both the damage and the recovery. Some buildings were nothing but rubble. Others stood tall, covered with banners thanking the soldiers who had protected them. She had been a diplomat before the invasion. She had worked for the Korean government, helping with trade negotiations and international relations. Now she had a new job, Earth's first ambassador to the galaxy. It wasn't a job she wanted, but it was a job someone had to do. "Ambassador, the car is ready," said her aide, a young man named. Nodded but didn't move yet. She was looking at a memorial wall. Thousands of names carved into black stone, people who died defending this city. She found the name she was looking for. Lieutenant Sora, fighter pilot, daughter, wife, mother, hero. Had never met Sora, but she had watched the video of Sora's final flight a dozen times. She needed to remember what people had sacrificed. She needed to carry that weight with her. "Okay," she said finally, "let's go." The car took her to a secure military facility on the outskirts of the city. This is where they kept the prisoners. Most of the captured soldiers were in camps near where they had been caught, but some were here in this special facility. She was here to meet one in particular. Captain sat in his cell reading. The humans had given him books. Human books translated into. He found them fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. He was reading about something called World War II, a global conflict that killed over 70 million humans. 70 million. He could barely comprehend it. And that was just one war. Humans had fought thousands of wars throughout their history. They had developed weapons that could destroy their entire planet. They had done terrible things to each other. But they had also shown mercy. Even in the worst wars, there were rules. Prisoners were treated humanely most of the time. Medics were protected. Eventually, the wars ended and people rebuilt. The humans were complicated, more complicated than any species he had ever encountered. "Captain," a guard called, "you have a visitor." Looked up as a human woman entered. She was small, dressed in a formal suit, with kind eyes that had seen too much sadness. "Captain," she said in perfect, "my name is, I'm Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Board." Ambassador stood respectfully. "Earth is joining the galaxy." "That's what we're trying to decide," said. She sat down across from him. "That's why I'm here. I want to understand what happened. I want to hear your perspective." "Why mine?" asked. "I'm just a captain. Commander made all the decisions." "Because Commander still thinks he did nothing wrong," said. "He thinks Earth was lucky. He thinks we won by accident, but you," she looked at him carefully, "you understand, don't you?" Was quiet for a moment, then he nodded slowly. "Yes, I understand." "Tell me," said, "why did you invade?" "Because we thought you were weak," said honestly. "We saw a species with no space travel, no advanced weapons, no knowledge of the greater galaxy. The Empire has a policy. It's better to bring primitive species into the fold before they develop dangerous technology." "By force," said flatly. "Yes," admitted. "I'm not proud of it, but that's what we do. We've done it a dozen times before. It usually works." "Usually," repeated. What was different about Earth? Picked up the book he had been reading. All of this, your history, your wars, your violence. We thought we understood warfare, but we've been part of the galactic community for 300 years. We follow rules, we have conventions, we fight with honor. He set the book down. You don't have any of that. You fight to win, no matter the cost. You've spent thousands of years developing better ways to kill each other. When we invaded, you just used all those techniques on us instead. His expression didn't change, but saw pain flicker in her eyes. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," he continued. "I'm saying it because it's the truth. Humans are the most dangerous species I've ever encountered, not because you're evil, but because you're survivors. You do whatever it takes to survive." "Is that what you'll tell the Galactic Board?" asked. "Yes," said, "and I'll tell them something else too. I'll tell them that humans also showed us mercy. You could have killed all the prisoners, many species would have, but you didn't. You gave us food, medical care, even books to read. You treated us better than we deserved." He looked at her directly. "That's why I think Earth should join the galaxy. You're dangerous, yes, but you're also capable of great kindness. The galaxy needs both." Was quiet for a long time. Finally she said, "Thank you for your honesty, Captain, it helps." She stood to leave, then paused. "One more question. If you could go back and change your decision to invade Earth, would you?" Didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely. We should have made contact peacefully. We should have offered friendship instead of conquest. Maybe things would have been different." "Maybe," agreed, "but we'll never know now." After leaving the facility, went to visit Sergeant Myra. The Special Forces soldier was in a hospital, not because of physical injuries, but because of what humans called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Myra sat by a window, looking out at the city. She had been one of the most effective resistance fighters during the invasion. Her unit had killed over 200 alien soldiers. Now she couldn't sleep without nightmares. "Ambassador," Myra said without turning around, "why are you here?" "To listen," said simply. She sat down nearby. "You did what needed to be done. You saved lives." "I know," Myra said. Her voice was flat. "But I can't stop seeing their faces. The aliens, they looked scared. They didn't want to be here. They were just following orders." "They invaded our planet," reminded her gently. "I know that too," Myra said. "But knowing doesn't make it easier. I killed people, Ambassador. Sentient beings with families and hopes and dreams. I killed them with my hands, with my weapons, with my plans. And everyone calls me a hero." Tears ran down her face. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel like a monster." Moved closer. "You're not a monster, Myra. You're a soldier who did her duty. The real monsters are the ones who started this war." "Will there be more wars?" Myra asked, "now that we know about the galaxy?" "I don't know," admitted. "That's what I'm trying to prevent. That's why I'm going to the Galactic Board, to show them that humans can be reasonable, that we want peace." "Do we," Myra asked, "want peace after everything they did to us?" "Yes," said firmly, "because the alternative is worse. If we stay isolated, someone else will eventually attack. If we become aggressive, the whole galaxy might unite against us. The only way forward is to join them and show them who we really are." "And who are we?" Myra asked. Thought about Lieutenant Sora flying into the stratosphere, about Private Minu showing mercy to Captain, about millions of humans working together to rebuild their cities. "We're survivors," she said. "We're fighters, but we're also dreamers and builders and teachers. We're complicated, and that's okay." 2 weeks later, stood before the United Nations General Assembly. Every country on Earth had sent representatives. This would be the most important speech of her life. "2 months ago we were invaded," she began. "We fought back and won, but victory came at a terrible price. Millions dead, cities destroyed, lives changed forever." She paused, looking at all the faces staring at her. "Now we face a choice. Do we stay isolated, alone in the universe, or do we join the galactic community and risk more conflict?" She took a deep breath. "I believe we should join them, not because I trust them, not because I think they won't try to hurt us again, but because isolation is not protection. It's just delayed vulnerability. If we join the galaxy, we can show them who we are. We can prove that humans are more than just warriors. We're scientists and artists and philosophers. We're capable of great violence, yes, but we're also capable of great compassion. The Galactic Board wants to know if Earth is a threat. I say we show them the truth. We're a threat to anyone who attacks us, but we're also potential allies to anyone who respects us. The assembly was silent. Then slowly one person began to clap, then another, then everyone. The vote was unanimous. Earth would join the galaxy. Felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders. She was going to represent humanity to aliens who feared them. She would have to balance strength with diplomacy. She would have to show that humans could be trusted while never forgetting that humans could be deadly. It was an impossible job, but someone had to do it. That night she visited the memorial wall again. She touched Lieutenant Sora's name. "I'll make sure your sacrifice meant something," she whispered. "I promise." The galaxy was waiting, and Earth was ready. The Galactic Board chamber was silent after his words. Commander stood on one side, exhausted and defeated. Stood on the other, calm and composed. Between them hung the question that would shape the future of both Earth and the galaxy. What happens next? Council Chair's massive form shifted slightly. The ancient being had witnessed countless conflicts over thousands of years, but nothing quite like this. "We have heard testimony from both sides," said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We have reviewed the evidence. Now we must deliberate." "There's nothing to deliberate," said a board member who resembled a floating jellyfish. Her name was, and she spoke for the peaceful union of worlds. "The Empire violated the most fundamental law of our community. They invaded a precontact species without provocation. The punishment should be severe." "But that's not the only issue here," countered a being of living metal who represented the Industrial Coalition. "Yes, they broke our laws, but now we have a new problem. Earth is dangerous, extremely dangerous. Should we allow such a violent species into our community?" Murmurs spread through the chamber. Many board members nodded in agreement. Felt anger rise in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. She had expected this. "May I respond to that?" she asked. Gestured permission. "You call us violent," said, her voice clear and strong. "You're right. We are violent. Do you know why? Because for our entire history, we've had no one to rely on but ourselves. No galactic community to protect us. No advanced species to guide us. We've been alone in a dangerous universe, so we learned to be dangerous ourselves." She walked forward, looking at each board member as she spoke. "You're afraid of what we might do. I understand that fear. But consider this, we've spent 10,000 years fighting each other. We've developed weapons that could end all life on our planet. We've come close to destroying ourselves dozens of times." She paused for effect. "And yet we're still here. We survived because we also learned something else. We learned to cooperate, to compromise, to choose peace even when war seemed easier. Every single day, billions of humans choose not to kill each other. That's not weakness. That's strength." "Beautiful words," said, "but words don't change what you are. Your military destroyed a fleet. You killed 48,000 soldiers. You defended ourselves," interrupted. "Or have you forgotten that they invaded us? We didn't go looking for this fight. We were minding our own business, living on our own planet when they came with warships and soldiers. What were we supposed to do? Welcome them with open arms?" "You could have surrendered," suggested another board member, a crystalline being from the Harmonious Collective. "Many species choose submission over death." "Then they're not really living, are they?" replied. "They're just existing. Humans would rather die free than live as slaves. That's not a flaw, that's who we are." Raised a limb for silence. "Let us be clear about what we're deciding today. First, the punishment for the Empire. Second, whether to allow Earth into the galactic community. These are separate questions, but both are important." He turned to Commander. "Commander, do you have anything to add before we decide your fate?" Looked tired and old. He had been standing for hours, reliving the worst moment of his life over and over again. "I made a terrible mistake," he he said quietly. I thought Earth would be easy to conquer because they seemed primitive. I was wrong. I didn't just underestimate their technology. I underestimated their spirit, their determination, their willingness to sacrifice everything for their freedom. He looked at the ambassador as right. We attacked them. They defended themselves. If our positions were reversed, I would have done exactly what they did, maybe worse. He turned back to the board. Punish me if you must. Punish the Empire. We deserve it. But don't punish Earth for surviving. Don't deny them a place in this community because they were strong enough to protect themselves. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some board members agreed with. Others argued that Earth was too dangerous. The debate went on for hours. Finally called for silence again. We will now vote, he announced. First, on the punishment for the Empire. The vote was unanimous. The Empire would pay massive reparations to Earth. They would be forbidden from military expansion for 50 years. Commander would be stripped of his rank and command. He would spend the rest of his life teaching young officers about the dangers of arrogance. Accepted the verdict without complaint. He had expected worse. Now, said, we vote on Earth's petition to join the galactic community. This vote was not unanimous, but it didn't need to be. 31 board members voted yes, 14 voted no, 2 abstained. Earth is accepted, announced. Provisionally, there will be conditions. His heart raced. What conditions? Your military capabilities must be limited to defensive operations only, said. You may defend your planet and your people, but you may not wage offensive wars against other species. You may not develop weapons of mass destruction beyond what you already have, and you must accept oversight from this board. Considered this carefully. It was restrictive but not unreasonable. We have one condition of our own, she said. The chamber went silent. No one had expected this. We accept your terms, continued, but we define what defensive means. If another species threatens Earth, we decide how to respond. If they attack our allies, we decide whether to help. We won't submit our military decisions to this board for approval. That's unacceptable, protested. You could use that loophole to justify anything. Then don't give us a reason to use it, said simply. Leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. Respect us and we'll respect you. It's very simple. Studied her for a long moment. This human was small and young, but she negotiated like someone with far more power than she actually had. It was impressive and concerning at the same time. You realize, said slowly, that if you abuse this freedom, we could revoke your membership. The entire galaxy could unite against you. We realize that, said, but we also know that we survived being invaded once. We'll survive it again if we have to. We're not making threats. We're just being honest about who we are and what we're willing to accept. Another long silence, then nodded. Very well. Earth may join the galactic community under those conditions, but know this, Ambassador, the galaxy will be watching you very carefully. Good, said. Watch us. You'll see that we can be trusted, but you'll also see that we can't be pushed around. The official ceremony was brief. Signed the documents. Earth was now part of the galactic community. Humanity was no longer alone. After the ceremony, found herself standing in a private chamber. The ancient being looked at her with something that might have been respect. You frightened them today, said. I know, replied. That was the point. Fear can prevent conflict, observed, but it can also cause it. Are you certain this is the path you want? Thought about all the people who had died. Lieutenant Sora, the millions of civilians, the soldiers on both sides. She thought about Sergeant Myra's nightmares and Captain's regrets. What I want is for no one to ever attack Earth again, she said. The best way to achieve that is to make sure everyone knows the cost. Commander learned that lesson. Now the rest of the galaxy can learn it without paying the same price. And what if someone doesn't learn? Asked. What if another species decides to test you? Then we'll teach them the same lesson, said. Her voice was calm but firm. We don't want to fight, but we will if we have to, and we're very good at it. Was quiet for a moment. You know what I find most interesting about humans? What? You spent thousands of years fighting each other, developing better ways to kill, perfecting the art of war. But you also spent that same time creating beautiful art, writing poetry, composing music, building friendships across borders. You're capable of both extreme violence and extreme compassion. That's rare in the galaxy. Is that good or bad? Asked. I don't know yet, admitted, but I think we're all about to find out. 3 days later, returned to Earth. She was greeted as a hero. People cheered in the streets. The president gave a speech praising her diplomatic skills, but didn't feel like a hero. She felt tired and worried and uncertain about the future. She visited the memorial wall again. Lieutenant Sara's name was still there, carved in stone, permanent, unchanging. We did it, whispered. We're part of the galaxy now. I hope that's what you would have wanted. The stone didn't answer, of course, but felt like she understood anyway. Sara and the millions like her hadn't died to keep Earth isolated. They died to keep Earth free, free to make its own choices, free to decide its own future. And now Earth would have that chance. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from Galactic Board, her first assignment as Earth's ambassador, a peaceful mission to a nearby system, establishing trade relations. She smiled. Peace. That's what they all wanted, wasn't it? But she also thought about Colonel and the Earth Defense Force, about the captured alien ships being studied, about human scientists learning new technology and human engineers building new weapons. Just in case. Because Earth had learned one lesson very well over its long history: hope for peace, but prepare for war. 5 years later, that preparation would prove wise. A new threat emerged from the dark reaches of space, an enemy unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. The Galactic Board sent an urgent message to Earth. We need your help. Read the message and thought about Lieutenant Sora, about Sergeant Myra, about Captain and his warning about human capabilities. She thought about all the humans who had sacrificed everything to protect their planet. And she thought about what humanity could do when they weren't fighting each other, but fighting together for something bigger than themselves. She sent a simple reply. We're on our way. Earth had joined the galaxy, and the galaxy was about to learn what humanity could do when they fought for their friends instead of against their enemies. The universe would never be the same. But that's a story for another day. For now, Earth stood as a new power in the galaxy, respected by some, feared by others, trusted by few. But free, always free. And ready for whatever came next.